Turn around.
Get in the car, now! I have done nothing wrong.
Marcus Hale's hands pressed flat against the warm metal of his car hood, the late afternoon sun glaring off the windshield like a spotlight. The flashing blue on dread strobes painted his reflection across the chrome bumper, fractured and hostile. "Step back, sir. Don't move," the officer barked, voice sharp enough to slice skin. Marcus swallowed hard. He'd done nothing but roll through a quiet suburban street after a 12-hour surveillance shift. He hadn't even touched his turn signal wrong, but the cop's narrowed eyes told him facts wouldn't matter. He heard the snap of the officer's holster strap, the unmistakable shuffle of boots closing in. A crowd had begun to gather on the sidewalk, neighbors peeking from porches, a phone already raised, recording. The air smelled of cut grass, exhaust, and something acrid: humiliation. Marcus forced his voice steady. "Officer, I can explain." The man cut him off with a sneer. "Explain why a black man is driving a car like that in this neighborhood." The line struck harder than the shove that followed. Heat flooded Marcus's chest. A rush of rage pressed down by years of discipline. He couldn't break cover. Not yet, but the badge in his wallet, the one he'd sworn to never use for himself, felt like a burning weight. He had seconds to decide, comply and endure, or reveal who he truly was. The officer's hand gripped his arm, cuffs clicking open. Marcus inhaled once, sharp and final. Then he said it: "I'm with the FBI." And silence fell. The late summer sun clung stubbornly to the horizon, casting long shadows across the neat, manicured lawns of Brookfield Heights. Marcus Hale kept both hands on the wheel of his black sedan, his eyes fixed on the road even as his body ached for rest. 12 hours of surveillance work would drain anyone, but exhaustion never dulled his habits. Mirror checks, lane discipline, signals on every turn. He had just rolled past the neighborhood park when the redan blue lights bloomed in his rearview mirror. They seemed to explode in his chest, a visceral jolt he could never quite shake, even as an FBI agent. Marcus slowed, pulled smoothly to the curb, and cut the engine. He waited, steadying his breath. The cruiser door opened. Boots hit pavement. A tall officer approached, his gait purposeful, heavy with entitlement. His name tag read Reed. His hand rested lazily near his holster, as though even walking toward Marcus was a potential combat scenario. Marcus cracked the window. "Good evening, officer. Is there a problem?" Reed's eyes narrowed. "License and registration." "Step out of the vehicle." Marcus frowned slightly. "May I ask why I'm being stopped?" "You fit the description," Reed said flatly. Marcus's pulse spiked. The phrase was a blade he'd heard too many times. He unclipped his wallet, slid out his license, and offered it through the crack. Reed didn't look at the card before gesturing impatiently. "Out, now." A couple on a porch turned their heads. A boy on a bicycle slowed to watch. Marcus felt the neighborhood tightening around him, eyes drawn like moths to sirens. He stepped out. The air smelled of cut grass, hot pavement, and something acrid, the anticipation of spectacle. Reed circled him slowly, eyes crawling over Marcus's tailored shirt, the sedan's leather interior, the government plates. "Nice car," Reed muttered. "Not bad for somebody like you." Marcus's jaw flexed. He kept his voice calm. "Officer, I work for the government. If you'll just check my hands on the hood," Reed snapped, tone rising, the sound of metal clicking free. "Handcuffs." Marcus complied, the hood warm under his palms. Neighbors gathered now, phones rising. The humiliation burned hotter than the steel. "Sir, I assure you," Red shoved him lightly, testing compliance. "Quiet. You're in the wrong neighborhood, driving where you don't belong." Marcus's heart hammered. His badge weighed heavy in his pocket, a lifeline, a risk. He wanted to keep it buried, wanted to endure. But Reed's grip tightened on his arm, the cuffs ready. Then Marcus heard it, a whisper from a boy filming nearby. "Why's he arresting him? He didn't do anything." The words cracked something inside him. Marcus lifted his head, his voice cut the humid air. "I'm with the FBI." The world froze. Reed's hand stilled mid. The crowd went silent, save for the soft buzz of a street lamp flickering to life. Marcus turned his gaze on the officer. "Steady and unblinking now," he said quietly. "Do you still want to put those cuffs on me?" The station smelled of burnt coffee and bleach, the kind of institutional scent Marcus had learned to hate. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, humming like an interrogation. He sat on a hard plastic chair near the booking desk, still in his work clothes, wrists free but dignity bruised. Officer Reed stood across the room, face taut with disbelief and anger. His jaw worked as though chewing glass. The captain, a gray-haired man with weary eyes, pinched the bridge of his nose. "Reed," Captain Dawson said finally, voice low but edged. "You arrested a federal agent without cause." Reed's nostrils flared. "With respect, sir." He fit the description. Suspicious vehicle. Out of place in that neighborhood. Marcus lifted his head. Suspicious for what reason? Reed's eyes cut to him, sharp as nails. Driving slow, watching houses. Marcus let out a short, bitter laugh. "I was driving home from work. You profiled me because of the color of my skin." The room stilled. A young desk sergeant shifted uncomfortably. Someone coughed into a fist. Captain Dawson's tone hardened. "That's not the point. The point is, this is now a problem. An FBI problem. A PR problem. Hell, a city problem." Marcus spoke evenly, his voice measured but trembling at the edges. "It's my problem too. Or don't you see that?" Reed muttered. "Man pulls a badge out of nowhere, and suddenly I'm the bad guy." Marcus shot him a look. "That badge is earned. You treated me like a criminal until you saw it. Tell me, Officer Reed, if I hadn't been federal, would I still be in a cell tonight?" Reed's silence was its own confession. The captain exhaled sharply. "Enough. We're going to keep this internal. No reports, no statements, until I speak with the Bureau liaison. Agent Hale, I strongly suggest you let this go. These things, they spiral." Marcus leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "These things, you mean racism, abuse of authority, humiliating a man in front of his neighbors." Dawson's jaw tightened. "I mean a public relations nightmare that helps no one." Marcus stood slowly, the chair legs scraping against the tile. He pulled his badge wallet from his pocket and laid it flat on the desk. The gold shield gleamed under the fluorescent lights. "I didn't ask for this, but don't think I'll be silent because it's inconvenient for you. I wear this badge for justice, not for cup-ups." For a moment, the only sound was the hum of the lights and the faint tapping of a keyboard at the back. Reed finally broke the silence, spitting words like venom. "You people always make it about race." Marcus froze, his hands clenched, nails digging into his palms. Every eye in the room turned toward Reed, the weight of his words settling heavy. Captain Dawson's voice was low, warning, "Reed." But Marcus answered first. His voice was soft, steady, all the more dangerous. "You just proved my point." The captain slammed a folder shut. "That's it. Meeting over. Agent Hale, you'll hear from your supervisor. Reed, my office." Now, as Reed stalked away, Marcus remained rooted, heart pounding, mind buzzing with rage. He could feel the divide in the room, younger officers watching him with uneasy sympathy, veterans watching with cold detachment. No one apologized. No one admitted wrong. The silence was the system speaking for itself. Marcus gathered his badge, squared his shoulders, and walked out into the night. Outside, the cool air hit his face, but it didn't cleanse him. He knew what was coming: whispers, resistance, and a machinery of excuses designed to bury the truth. And for the first time in years, Marcus wasn't sure if his badge would protect him or betray him. The FBI field office conference room was all glass and steel, a box built for intimidation. The blinds were drawn tight, sealing Marcus inside with his supervisor, Special Agent in Charge Dana Whitfield. The hum of the air conditioning filled the silence between them. Whitfield sat at the head of the table, blazer perfectly pressed, her eyes sharp but unreadable. Marcus sat opposite, his hands folded tight, knuckles pale. "You know why we're here," Whitfield said at last. Marcus held her gaze. "Because a local cop decided I was guilty of existing while black." Her expression flickered, the faintest crack, before she sighed. "Marcus, listen, I've seen the report. I've watched the video. It's ugly. But our relationship with Brookfield PD is already strained. They're partners in multiple operations. If this goes public, it is public." Marcus cut in. "Half the neighborhood saw it. Someone's video is already online." Whitfield's jaw tightened. "Then you need to decide how you want to play this, quietly, professionally, not emotionally." The words stung more than he expected. Emotionally, as if anger at injustice were a weakness, a liability. Marcus leaned forward. "If it were you, would you call it emotional? If it were your son, slammed against a car hood, humiliated in front of strangers?" Marcus, her voice was low, warning. "Don't you know I respect you? But you also know how this works. Sometimes we have to eat the small fights to win the big ones." He stared at her, disbelief rising in his throat. Being treated like a criminal in my own country isn't a small fight. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The air conditioning clicked louder, a mechanical pulse against the silence. Finally, Whitfield folded her hands. I can make sure this disappears. The captain at Brookfield PD is willing to bury it. No disciplinary action. No Magia circus. But you have to cooperate. No statements. No complaints filed. Marcus laughed, not with humor, but with exhaustion. So the plan is, I swallow it, so Reed can keep walking the streets like nothing happened. So the next man he decides looks out of place, ends up cuffed, or worse. Whitfield's eyes hardened. The Bureau needs stability. Agents don't make headlines. We can't be the story. Marcus's voice dropped to a near whisper. Maybe that's the problem. Whitfield leaned back, measuring him. I need to know, Marcus. Are you going to let this go? His silence stretched, filled with memories he didn't invite. He saw his father, a postal worker who wore his uniform with pride, stopped twice in one summer for broken taillights that never existed. He heard his mother's voice warning him, at 15, never to run in certain neighborhoods. He remembered walking into Quantico, the weight of every ancestor on his shoulders, swearing he would change the system from the inside, and now the system was staring him in the face, telling him to shut up. He swallowed hard. When I joined this bureau, I swore an oath not to protect the comfort of crooked cops, not to bury the truth, to protect the Constitution, to protect people, all people. Whitfield's lips pressed into a thin line. Then you'd better be ready for the fallout. Marcus stood, his chair scraping against the polished floor. He straightened his jacket, the badge on his belt heavy with meaning. I've lived with fallout my whole life, he said quietly. Whitfield's eyes followed him as he walked out. She didn't call him back. The hallway outside felt colder, lonelier. Marcus moved past bustling agents without hearing their chatter. His phone buzzed in his pocket. A text from his younger sister, Lena. Saw the video. Are you okay? He typed back slowly, fingers trembling. Alive, angry, trying to decide what to do. A pause, then her reply. Do the right thing, even if it costs you. Marcus stopped in the corridor, eyes closed. Her words landed heavier than Whitfield's warnings. He knew what the right thing meant. He just didn't know if the Bureau, or his career, could survive it. But one truth was already undeniable. Silence was complicity, and Marcus Hale wasn't built to stay silent. The first time Marcus saw the video, it wasn't on the evening news. It was on his phone, sent by his sister at 6 a.m. It's everywhere. Lena's text, read. He tapped the link, and the screen filled with shaky cell phone footage, himself pressed against the hood, Reed's voice barking, the words slicing through tinny speakers, explain why a black man is driving a car like that in this neighborhood. The camera had caught every sneer, every shove, every humiliating second. The clip ended with Marcus's own voice, quiet, steady, explosive. I'm with the FBI. Then silence. Marcus closed his eyes. It was no longer just his shame, his moment. It belonged to the world. By noon, the story had detonated. On cable news, anchors leaned toward cameras with practiced solemnity. Another case of racial profiling caught on video. This time, the target, shockingly, is an FBI agent. Clips rolled on loop, slowed and zoomed until every flicker of expression was dissected. In an activist livestream, a young black organizer addressed her followers. This isn't new. What's new is that this time, the man had a badge. Imagine how many others don't. On talk radio, a caller sneered. Why is he even crying racism? Cop was just doing his job. Suspicious cars deserve to be checked. In Facebook groups, strangers argued like jurors. Some defended Marcus, some mocked him, others twisted themselves into knots to excuse Reed's words. The noise was deafening. At the field office, Marcus tried to bury himself in paperwork, but whispers trailed him through the corridors. Is that him? Yeah, that's Agent Hal, from the video. He felt eyes on his back, measuring, pitying, doubting. Every sideways glance was a reminder. His career was no longer private. Whitfield called him into her office. She didn't waste time. The bureau's getting calls. Reporters, politicians, civil rights groups. Everyone wants a statement. Marcus sat stiffly. What are we saying? Her silence was the answer. We're not saying anything, she said finally. For now. Marcus's laugh was bitter. So Reed gets to spin his story while we hide. Whitfield's voice was low, careful. Marcus, we don't control the narrative. The second we comment, we're in the crossfire. And frankly, some people upstairs would prefer you stay out of sight until this blows over. Out of sight, Marcus repeated, the phrase sour on his tongue. Whitfield met his eyes. You need to understand, the Bureau doesn't want to become a symbol. You becoming one is dangerous. Marcus leaned forward. I didn't ask to be a symbol, but I'm not the one who should be hiding. That night, the video made national headlines. On CNN, a panel argued heatedly. This officer clearly racially profiled. Hold on, let's not rush to judgment. We don't have the full context. The context is right there on the tape. On Fox, the Chiron read, War on Police, FBI agent exploits race card. Reed's union issued a statement within hours. Our officer acted in good faith, prioritizing neighborhood safety. The focus should not be on destroying a decorated policeman's career over a misunderstanding. Marcus nearly threw his remote across the room. Misunderstanding. Lena called. Her voice was fierce, vibrating through the line. They're trying to make you the problem. Don't let them. I didn't want any of this, Marcus murmured. Doesn't matter. You're in it now. Question is, what are you going to do with it? The following morning, Marcus walked into a coffee shop near the office. Conversation stilled. Two college kids looked up from their laptops. One whispered, That's him. The barista's smile was awkward, forced. A name for the order. Marcus said nothing, just placed a bill on the counter. Behind him, a man muttered under his breath, just loud enough. Bet he pulled the badge card quick. Marcus's shoulders tensed. He turned slowly, locking eyes with the man, middle-aged, ball cap, folded arms. You think that badge saved me? Marcus asked softly. The man shifted uncomfortably but didn't answer. Marcus picked up his coffee, his voice low and firm. It shouldn't take a badge to be treated like a human being. The shop was silent as he walked out. That evening, his supervisor called again. Marcus. Whitfield's voice was tight, urgent. Reed's attorney is requesting a joint press conference. They want to frame this as a misunderstanding. If you cooperate, maybe we can move forward without more fallout. Marcus laughed bitterly. Move forward for who? Him, the Bureau. Marcus, think about your career. His reply was immediate. I'm thinking about my life. A long pause. Then Whitfield's voice, colder now. Then you're on your own. Marcus ended the call, his chest hollow and burning. He looked out his apartment window at the city lights, each flicker a reminder of eyes watching, waiting for him to stumble. He'd never felt so visible, and so utterly alone. But beneath the fear, something else stirred, a resolve he hadn't felt in years. They wanted silence. They wanted him erased. Marcus knew then, he would speak, even if the world wasn't ready to hear it. The television studio lights gleamed off Reed's freshly pressed uniform, the silver bars on his collar polished to a mirror's shine. He sat rigid in the interview chair, jaw squared, posture perfect, every inch the model cop. The anchor leaned forward. Officer Reed, the video has sparked national outrage. Many accuse you of racial profiling. What do you say to those critics? Reed exhaled dramatically, as though carrying a burden no one else could understand. It's easy for people sitting at home to judge, but out there, in the field, we make split-second decisions. That night, I saw a vehicle that matched reports of suspicious activity. I acted to protect the neighborhood. My only concern was safety. The anchor nodded gravely, feeding him the next line. So you stand by your actions? Absolutely. If I hesitate, if I second-guess, people could get hurt. I did my duty. That's what the badge requires. The camera zoomed closer, catching the faint smile tugging at Reed's mouth. And as for the FBI agent, he added smoothly, I respect his service, but the moment he revealed his badge, I treated him with full professional courtesy. Any suggestion otherwise is simply false. Marcus watched from his living room couch, the glow of the screen painting his face in cold blue light. He felt the lie like a slap. Treated him with courtesy. Reed had shoved him against metal and spat suspicion into his ear. Lena's voice came through the phone speaker, sharp with disbelief. He's rewriting history in real time, and people are buying it. Marcus muted the TV, staring at Reed's carefully rehearsed performance. He's not talking to the truth. He's talking to fear, to the people who want to believe him. Later that night, Reed appeared again, this time at a press conference flanked by his union lawyer and the police. Union President. The lawyer's voice was crisp, rehearsed. Officer Reed has dedicated over 15 years to this community. His record speaks for itself. He acted within his authority, based on reasonable suspicion. This attempt to smear him is nothing more than political theater. Reporters shouted questions. One cut through, but what about his words on the video? Explain why a black man is driving a car like that. The union president leaned in, smiling thinly. Those words are taken out of context. Officer Reed was assessing the situation under stress. Anyone twisting that into racism is pushing an agenda. Flashbulbs popped. Reed stood silently between them, head high, gaze steady, as if he were the one wronged. In the locker room at the FBI field office the next day, Marcus overheard two agents murmuring by the benches. Reed's got the union behind him. He'll skate. Guy's smart. He's flipping it, making himself the victim. They fell silent when they noticed Marcus enter. He caught the pity in their eyes, the unspoken warning. You can't win. That evening, Marcus sat in his apartment, laptop open, scrolling through headlines. Officer defends actions in viral stop. Police union backs. Decorated officer amid FBI agent controversy. Was this a misunderstanding blown out of proportion? He closed the screen with a snap, the silence of his apartment pressing in. His phone buzzed again. A message from a former Quantico classmate. Hang in there, man. The system eats its own. Don't let them break you. Marcus typed back, fingers heavy, not sure if I'm breaking or just waking up. Meanwhile, Reed's voice filled the airwaves again, this time on conservative talk radio. I've dedicated my life to protecting good families from crime. And now I'm being crucified for doing my job. Cancel culture is coming for cops. If they can do this to me, they can do it to anyone. The host grunted approvingly. You're a hero, Officer Reed. Keep your head high. Marcus switched the dial off. Rage coiled in his chest. Reed wasn't just defending himself. He was recruiting an army, wrapping himself in the flag, the badge, and a story carefully stripped of truth. And Marcus knew, silence would let that story win. The City Hall auditorium smelled faintly of old wood and nervous sweat. Every seat was filled, every aisle crowded. Reporters lined the back wall, cameras angled at the raised platform where officials sat like weary judges. In the front row, Marcus sat stiffly, the stares of strangers burning into his skin. He hadn't wanted to be here, but silence was no longer an option. Across the aisle, Officer Reed lounged in his chair with studied ease, uniform crisp, his lawyer whispering in his ear. The faint smirk tugging at his lips was infuriating, the confidence of a man certain the system would protect him. The city council chair banged a gavel. We are here to address the incident of August 12th, involving Officer Thomas Reed and Special Agent Marcus Hale. This is a public forum. We ask all attendees to remain respectful. Respectful. Marcus almost laughed. Respect had been denied to him from the moment Red pulled him over. The first testimony came from a young woman who'd filmed the video. She clutched the microphone, voice trembling. I lived 2 houses down. I saw everything. Agent Hale wasn't doing anything wrong. He was just sitting there. And then Officer Reed, she swallowed hard. He said those words about a black man in that neighborhood. Everyone heard it. I recorded it because I knew no one would believe it otherwise. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Reed's lawyer leaned forward, voice smooth. Miss, isn't it possible you misinterpreted the tone? Officers often make quick judgments under stress. The woman's voice sharpened. I know what I heard. Applause broke out, cut short by the gavel. Next, an older man, gray hair, steady voice, stepped forward. I've lived in Brookfield Heights 30 years. I saw Agent Hale drive by plenty of times. Never bothered me. But that night, I watched him pushed against his own car. Humiliated, and for what? Driving while black. The silence that followed was heavy, uncomfortably honest. Reed shifted, jaw tightening. His lawyer whispered again, but Reed raised a hand, asking to speak. When he stood, the room leaned in. Look, he began, voice carrying with practiced authority. I didn't wake up that day wanting to arrest an FBI agent. I responded to suspicious behavior. That's my job. Protecting families, protecting kids. If I hesitated, if I second-guessed because I was worried about how it looked, and someone got hurt, would any of you forgive me? He paused, letting the rhetoric sink in. A few heads nodded. This isn't about race, Reed pressed on. This is about safety. That's all it's ever been. A smattering of applause rose from the back of the room. Marcus felt the heat rise in his chest. He stood before he realized it. His own name called. Walking to the microphone, he felt 1,000 eyes trace every step. His voice was steady, but his hands clenched the podium. I've spent my career protecting this country. I've worn a badge most people never see. And yet none of that mattered when Officer Reed saw me behind the wheel. He didn't see a man, he saw a threat. He saw a stereotype. The room stilled. Marcus forced himself to continue, each word heavier than the last. When he shoved me against my car, when he asked why someone like me was in that neighborhood, it wasn't about safety, it was about power, about deciding who belongs and who doesn't. Reed's smirk faltered. Marcus's voice broke slightly, but he didn't stop. If I hadn't had this badge, he tapped his belt, the FBI shield glinting in the light. What do you think would have happened to me that night? Would I be standing here? Or would I be another headline none of you wanted to read? The silence after his words was absolute, oppressive. Then a single voice shouted from the back, "Tell the truth." Applause exploded, echoing off the high ceilings. People stood, clapping, some cheering, others wiping their eyes. The gavel banged furiously. Order. Marcus stepped back from the microphone, his heart pounding, his chest burning. He hadn't planned to speak that way. The words had torn themselves out of him, raw and unpolished. And yet, looking at Reed's face, the forced stillness, the twitch of his jaw, Marcus knew he had struck a nerve. After the session adjourned, reporters swarmed the hallway. "Agent Hale, do you intend to file charges? Do you believe the police department is covering up misconduct? Do you think Officer Reed should be fired?" Marcus pushed through the questions, saying nothing. Not yet, but inside, a decision was forming, sharper, clearer with each passing moment. He was done playing quiet. Reed had spoken his defense. The city had heard his dot now. The fight would move to a bigger stage, and Marcus was ready. The Hoover building gleamed beneath the sharp DC sunlight, its gray facade as unyielding as the system it represented. Marcus walked through the revolving glass doors with a measured stride, the weight of the city hall meeting still pressing on his chest. Inside, the air was chilled, the hum of fluorescent lights constant. Colleagues glanced up as he passed, their eyes darting quickly away. Some nodded in quiet solidarity, others avoided him altogether. The story had spread, the arrest, the video, the confrontation. He was no longer just Marcus Hale, special agent. He was a headline, on the 12th floor. The conference room smelled faintly of polished wood and stale coffee. 3 senior officials sat at the far end of a long table. Assistant Director Mason, silver-haired and stern, adjusted his glasses as Marcus entered. Beside him, Deputy Director Clark wore a frown of bureaucratic fatigue. At the corner, Legal Counsel Avery tapped a pen against her notepad. "Agent Hale," Mason began, voice clipped. "Sit." Marcus lowered himself into the chair opposite them. He placed his badge on the table deliberately, the metal catching the overhead light. Mason folded his hands. "The situation in Brookfield Heights has escalated. The video has gone viral. You're at the center of a national story." Clark leaned forward. "You have to understand, Marcus, this isn't just about you. It's about the Bureau's relationship with law enforcement partners across the country. Police unions are watching. Politicians are calling. We can't afford unnecessary friction." Marcus's jaw tightened. Unnecessary friction. "I was shoved against a car and handcuffed in my own neighborhood. If I hadn't been FBI, I might not be here at all. And you're worried about optics?" Silence. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, filling the gap where empathy should have been. Counsel Avery finally spoke, tone measured. "No one is dismissing what happened, but litigation, public hearings, investigations, these have consequences. For the Bureau's reputation, for partnerships, for resources. The director wants this handled quietly." Marcus stared at her, the words cold and familiar. Handled quietly. He leaned forward, voice low but steady. "Do you know how many times I've heard that phrase from victims who came to us for justice? Handled quietly, buried, forgotten. That's exactly how abuse survives." Mason's expression hardened. "Careful, agent." "No, sir," Marcus shot back. "Careful is what got us here. Careful is what allowed Reed to believe he could humiliate me in broad daylight, with witnesses and cameras, and still walk away untouched." Clark exhaled, pinching the bridge of his nose. "Marcus, you need to think strategically. If you press this, you'll isolate yourself. Your career could be my career." Marcus interrupted, heat rising in his voice. "My career doesn't mean a damn thing if I let them bury this. I swore an oath to uphold justice, not just when it's convenient, not just when it doesn't ruffle feathers." The room fell into brittle silence. Avery finally closed her notepad, voice soft but sharp. "Agent Hale, are you saying you intend to defy the Bureau's recommendation?" Marcus looked at the badge on the table, the symbol of everything he had sacrificed for, everything he had believed in. His reflection stared back at him in its polished surface. Yes, he said quietly, if the Bureau won't stand for justice, I will. Mason's jaw clenched. Then you leave us no choice. He slid a file across the table. Inside, a formal reassignment notice. Effective immediately, Marcus Hale was being placed on administrative leave, pending internal review. The words burned in his chest. Administrative leave, stripped of authority, silenced, but not broken. Later, standing on the sidewalk outside headquarters, Marcus lifted his face to the sky. The late afternoon sun was fading, painting the city in shades of gold and shadow. His phone buzzed in his pocket. Messages from reporters, texts from allies, emails from strangers. People were watching. He had been pushed out of the system, but that only freed him from its chains. He whispered to himself, almost like a vow, they want quiet, I'll give them truth instead. And as the traffic roared around him, Marcus Hale realized something he hadn't dared admit until now. The fight was no longer just about him. It was about everyone who had ever been told to endure injustice in silence. And he was not going to be silent. The news cycle didn't slow. By the second week, Marcus's story was everywhere. Primetime interviews replayed the arrest footage. Headlines debated race and policing. Late-night hosts cracked uneasy jokes about arresting the wrong man. But the laughter carried anger. Outside Brookfield Heights Police Department, protesters marched daily. Signs bobbed above the crowd. Equal justice. End profiling. Who protects us from you? The chants shook the building's glass windows. Inside, Officer Reed slammed his locker shut. His knuckles whitened around the metal handle. Whole damn world's gone crazy, he muttered. Another officer leaned against the row of lockers, arms crossed. It's not gonna blow over, Reed. Mayors catching heat. State attorneys sniffing around. Reed sneered. They'll fold like always. I've got the union. I've got the department. I've done nothing wrong. But the words rang hollow, even to him. That night, in a bar, just outside town, Reed sat nursing a drink. A television above the counter blared. Yet another panel discussion. Marcus's face appeared on screen. Seated opposite a journalist, Marcus's voice was calm but unyielding. This isn't just about me. This is about a system that allows officers to act unbiased with no consequence. If I had been anyone else, that night could have ended with my body on the pavement instead of handcuffs on my wrists. The bar had gone quiet. Every head turned toward the screen. Someone muttered, "He's got a point." Reed slammed his glass down, storming out into the night air. For the first time, he felt it. The shift. The sense that maybe, just maybe, the world wasn't going to cover for him this time. Across the city, Marcus sat in his small apartment, phone buzzing with calls he ignored. He stared at a bulletin board he'd pinned with articles, emails, screenshots, a timeline of his case, meticulously laid out. On his desk, a draft statement glared at him. A formal complaint filed with the Department of Justice, accusing Reed, and by extension the Brookfield Heights Police Department of racial profiling and unlawful arrest. His finger hovered over the send button. The Bureau had abandoned him. Filing meant declaring war not just on Red, but on the system that still shielded him. A knock interrupted his thoughts. Opening the door, Marcus found Jasmine from the Community Coalition. Her eyes were tired but resolute. "You can't wait any longer," she said. "People are ready. They're asking for you to lead, Marcus, to take this beyond speeches." He rubbed his temples. "You don't get it, Jasmine. Once I push this button, it's not just my fight. It'll get ugly. They'll come after me harder than ever." Her gaze didn't waver. "They already came after you. You survived. Now use it." Marcus looked back at the screen. His hand trembled, but he clicked send. 2 days later, the pressure boiled over at a televised press conference. The mayor of Brookfield Heights tried to defend the police department, her voice wavering under the weight of shouted questions. "Is Officer Reed being investigated for misconduct? Do you condone racial profiling in your city? Why did it take national attention for you to respond?" The cameras caught her falter, lips pressing tight before she admitted, "There will be a formal inquiry." The words lit a fuse. The crowd outside roared. Protesters banged on barricades, chanting Marcus's name. Back in his apartment, Marcus watched the broadcast. He wasn't smiling. The movement was bigger than him now, but that only made it more dangerous. His phone rang again. "Unknown number." He answered cautiously. A cold, clipped voice spoke. "Agent Hale, you've made enemies in high places. For your own sake, stop pushing." The line went dead. Marcus stared at the silent phone, the threat hanging heavy in the air. The system was cracking, and now, it was turning on him. But it was too late to stop. The city courthouse was swarming. Reporters jostled against barricades, their cameras clicking like a swarm of insects. Protesters chanted on the steps, holding signs that bore Reed's name crossed out in thick black ink. Marcus stood at the edge of the crowd, collar up against the morning chill. He hadn't wanted to come, not as a spectacle, not as a symbol, but he owed it to the people who had marched, shouted, and carried his name when he thought he was alone. Inside, the inquiry hearings were already underway. Officer Thomas Reed sat at the witness table, jaw clenched, uniform pristine. His lawyer hovered nearby, whispering before the questioning began. The cameras zoomed in. America was watching. The state attorney leaned forward, voice calm but firm. "Officer Reed, let's revisit your arrest report. You claimed Agent Hale was acting suspiciously in his parked vehicle. Can you clarify what specific behavior led you to that conclusion?" Reed's throat bobbed. He lingered in a high-value neighborhood. Late hours. Vehicle was out of place. Out of place, the attorney repeated. "You're aware that Agent Hale is a homeowner in that neighborhood, correct?" Reed's lawyer shifted uncomfortably. "Yes, but at the time, the attorney cut him off. "Officer, the surveillance footage shows him sitting in his car for less than 10 minutes. No traffic violation, no disturbance. And yet you escalated to physical restraint. Can you explain that?" Reed's voice faltered. "I acted within protocol." The attorney slid a printed transcript across the table. "Is this your voice on the recording saying, 'A black man doesn't belong here'? Yes or no?" Reed's face reddened. "That clip is out of context." The attorney's tone sharpened. "Is it your voice?" The silence stretched, broken only by the scratch of reporters' pens. Finally, "Yes." Gasps rippled through the gallery. The cameras caught every twitch of his face. From the back, Marcus felt his chest tighten. He wanted to cheer, to shout, but instead he stood stone still. Vindication didn't feel like triumph, it felt like scar tissue tearing open. The questioning pressed on, every answer pulling Reed deeper into the quicksand of his own arrogance. His lawyer tried to intervene, but the tide had turned. The public, the politicians, even fellow officers who once shielded him now distanced themselves. The union rep, called to testify, stammered through weak defenses. "We support our officers. But in this instance, the attorney cut in. Support meant shielding misconduct until video evidence made denial impossible." The crowd murmured again, the rot exposed in broad daylight. By afternoon, the committee issued its recommendation. Officer Thomas Reed would be stripped of his badge and referred for federal civil rights charges. The announcement landed like a thunderclap. Protesters outside erupted in cheers. Reporters rushed to broadcast the fall of the man who once smirked with untouchable confidence. Inside, Reed's shoulders sagged. For the first time, he looked small, powerless. Marcus met his gaze across the courtroom. For a heartbeat, the world narrowed to the two of them. Reed's lips moved, almost a whisper, but Marcus read it. "This isn't over." That night, Marcus returned to his apartment, exhausted. He should have felt victorious. Instead, he sat in the quiet dark, listening to the city hum outside his window. His phone buzzed, a flood of messages from allies, strangers, even fellow agents thanking him for speaking out. Praise filled the screen, but beneath the pride was something heavier. The cost. He thought of his career, now dangling in uncertainty, of the bureau that had chosen silence over him, of the nights he lay awake, replaying the sound of the cuffs, the smirk on Reed's face, the cold metal of the car against his cheek. Justice had come, but it hadn't erased the scar. Marcus whispered to himself, voice hoarse. "This was never just about me. It's about making sure no one else lives it." He leaned back, letting the exhaustion wash over him. Outside, chants still echoed faintly in the distance. The fight wasn't over, but Reed had fallen, and for the first time, Marcus believed the system could bend if enough people forced it. The air in Brookfield Heights felt different. The courthouse steps, once crowded with protests, now stood quiet. The signs had been taken down. The cameras moved on. Headlines no longer screamed Marcus's name. But silence didn't mean peace. Marcus walked through the neighborhood at dusk, his hands in his pockets. Children rode bikes down the street, their laughter ringing out. A woman watering her lawn waved. He waved back, though a knot of unease still tugged at him. He passed the corner where Reed had stopped him weeks ago. The shadows of memory replayed unbidden. The The flash of red and blue lights, the hard slam against metal, the humiliation of cold handcuffs. Even now, free and vindicated, his chest tightened. Scars weren't always visible. Home. His apartment was stacked with letters, some handwritten, others typed. Strangers had written from across the country, teachers, parents, young black men who'd seen themselves in his story. One read, "Because you didn't stay silent, I feel less alone." Marcus folded it carefully, placing it in a small box. A reminder. His phone buzzed. Jasmine's name lit up the screen. "You're coming tonight, right?" she asked. "I don't know," he said. "Feels strange, like I'm supposed to celebrate." Marcus. Her voice softened. "It's not about celebrating. It's about remembering what it took, about reminding people the fight isn't finished." Later, he stood in a crowded community hall. The coalition had gathered activists, families, even a few local officials who'd once looked the other way. The room hushed as Marcus stepped forward. He looked at the faces before him, then down at his hands. For a moment, the words stuck. He wasn't a politician, not a preacher, just a man who'd been forced to live a truth others had ignored. Finally, he spoke. "I didn't choose this fight. It came for me. But I've learned something. When you're silenced, when you're humiliated, when the system tells you to wait for justice, waiting means losing. Speaking out means risk. But silence guarantees nothing changes." He paused, scanning the crowd. Reed lost his badge. That matters. But what matters more is what we do next. Because there are thousands of Reeds out there, and thousands of us, waiting to be heard. We can't wait anymore. Applause swelled, rising into a chant. No more silence. No more silence. Marcus stepped back, letting the sound wash over him. For the first time since the night of the arrest, he didn't feel alone. Walking home afterward, the city lights reflected off rain-slick pavement. He pulled his coat tighter, listening to the rhythm of footsteps and distant sirens. The bureau hadn't called. His career remained in limbo. Reed's lawyer had already threatened appeals, and somewhere, people still whispered that Marcus had overreacted, that race was only in his head, but he no longer carried the weight alone. As he reached his door, Marcus looked back at the street. The fight wasn't finished, but he knew he had the resolve to face it. He unlocked the door, stepping inside, whispering into the quiet. "They tried to take my voice. They gave me a mission instead." And with that, Marcus Hale, scarred but unbroken, closed the door behind him. The city outside hummed with possibility.